The deep red dress waited silently inside my closet, draped over its hanger like a memory that refused to fade. I had worn it on days that mattered, celebrations, milestones, moments when family felt permanent and safe. As I eased it over my shoulders now, I wondered if tonight would mark an ending instead of a beginning. 3 weeks had passed since my daughter and I stopped speaking. The argument replayed in my head far too often. The number she demanded still echoed, $65,000. Not a request, not a conversation, a declaration, as if the savings her father and I had built over decades were not meant to protect my future, but to fund hers. She said I was selfish, said I was hoarding money instead of helping her start a life. I had tried to explain that love did not require luxury bathrooms or overseas honeymoons. I had offered what I could, enough for a beautiful, meaningful wedding close to home. But the look she gave me that day wasn't disappointment. It was calculation. The call came on a quiet Tuesday morning while I was kneeling in the small garden behind my downsized home, dirt under my nails, grief still heavy in my chest from the life I'd lost. Her voice sounded different, soft, careful, almost fragile. She wanted to talk. Dinner, she said. Hope rose in me before I could stop it. Perhaps pregnancy had changed her. Perhaps time had cooled the anger. Perhaps motherhood had begun teaching her the value of sacrifice. She chose the restaurant, an Italian place filled with memories where her father once held my hand across candlelight and told me growing old together would never scare him. As I finished my makeup, I allowed myself to believe reconciliation was possible. The drive there took me past pieces of my life, schools, parks, sidewalks where my children once ran ahead of me laughing. Each familiar landmark felt like a goodbye I hadn't prepared for. She was already seated when I arrived, radiant, confident, dressed in something I knew cost more than it should have. She hugged me, and for a moment I forgot everything except that she was still my child. Then he arrived, not alone. Men in suits followed him, briefcases in hand, expressions sharp and practiced. The table shifted, the air changed, my heart sank before a word was spoken. This was not dinner. This was an ambush. Documents slid across the table, power, authority, control. And when I asked what would happen if I refused, my daughter looked me straight in the eye and delivered her ultimatum. I wouldn't see my grandchild. The room blurred, but something inside me did not break. Instead, it hardened. I reached for my phone and made a call that would change everything. They thought they had cornered me, but they didn't know I had already prepared for this moment. And when the next person walked through that restaurant door, the power at the table would finally shift. The man who answered my call didn't rush me. That alone told me I had chosen correctly. I excused myself from the table under the pretense of needing air. My daughter didn't stop me. She was already smiling again, confident, convinced the papers on the table had sealed her victory. The men in suits whispered among themselves as if the future had already been decided. Outside, the evening air felt colder than it should have. I stood under the restaurant's dim lights and spoke quietly into the phone, giving my location, my name, and just enough context for him to understand the seriousness of what was unfolding. When I ended the call, my hands were steady in a way that surprised me. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't asking anyone for mercy. I was preparing to defend myself. When I returned to the table, my daughter's tone had changed. She spoke slowly, carefully, like someone explaining something to a child. She told me this wasn't personal, that everything was standard, that young families needed support and older parents needed guidance. The words stung more than the threat. One of the men finally spoke, introducing himself as a legal advisor. He explained the documents again, how they would protect my interests while granting temporary financial oversight to ensure family stability. Temporary, a word designed to sound harmless. I asked one simple question: what happens if I say no? The silence that followed was deliberate. My daughter answered. She leaned forward, her hand resting on her stomach, her voice low enough that only I could hear. Then you won't be part of my child's life. I searched her face for hesitation. There was none. That was when I understood something painful and final. This wasn't about money. It was about control. They wanted me small, quiet, grateful, obedient. The documents remained untouched in front of me. I folded my hands in my lap and said nothing. They mistook my silence for weakness. Minutes later, the restaurant door opened again, and this time, the person who entered did not come to negotiate. He came to listen. They thought the pressure would break me, but they didn't realize I had already invited the truth to sit at the table, and once it arrived, there would be no going back. He didn't announce himself. He didn't need to. The moment he stepped into the restaurant, the balance at the table shifted. I watched it happen in real time, the straightening of backs, the sudden pause in conversation, the subtle awareness that something unexpected had entered the room. My daughter noticed first. Her smile tightened just slightly. The men in suits exchanged quick glances, the kind professionals make when a variable appears that wasn't part of the plan. He walked over calmly, greeted everyone with a polite nod, and then turned to me. "Are you all right?" he asked. It was a simple question, but it carried weight. I nodded once and gestured to the empty chair beside me. He sat, placed his briefcase neatly at his feet, and waited. He didn't rush. He didn't interrupt. He let the silence stretch until someone else felt the need to fill it. One of the advisors cleared his throat and began explaining again, policies, intentions, benefits. He spoke smoothly, confidently, using language designed to confuse rather than clarify. The man beside me listened carefully. Then he asked one question: has she been advised independently? The word independently landed like a stone dropped into still water. My daughter opened her mouth, then closed it. Another advisor stepped in, saying they were only offering support, that everything was voluntary, that no one was forcing anything. The man beside me nodded slowly. "And yet," he said, turning toward my daughter, "you've tied access to her grandchild to a financial decision." The color drained from her face. "That's not what this is," she said quickly. "I just want what's best for my family." "For your family," he repeated calmly, "or for you?" Silence. The restaurant noise seemed to fade into the background. Forks clinked, glasses clattered. But at our table, time felt suspended. He opened his briefcase and placed a single folder on the table, unopened. "Before anything is signed," he said, "I'd like to understand why funds are being demanded before the birth of a child who hasn't even arrived yet." No one answered immediately. Then one of the men spoke, too quickly. "There are expenses, preparations." The man beside me nodded again. "Of course, and I assume those expenses explain the recent financial transfers as well." That's when I saw it. Fear. Not in my daughter, but in the advisors. She looked between them, confused now, uncertain. "What transfers?" she asked. The man beside me didn't answer her. He simply slid the folder across the table and told them exactly what he already knew. They came expecting my signature, but instead, the truth began unfolding piece by piece, and once it started, there was no way to stop what would come next. The folder slid across the table, and the room went quiet. My daughter froze, her hand hovering over her glass of water as if she had forgotten it existed. The men beside her straightened in unison, eyes narrowing, suddenly aware that the narrative had shifted. The man beside me didn't reach for the papers. He simply let them sit there, an unspoken challenge hanging in the air. "This," he said, his voice calm but firm, "is not just about planning or precaution. It is about accountability. Every decision, every transfer, every document you presented assumes she would not ask questions, and yet here she is. He looked at me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt seen. Not as a mother, not as a client, not as someone to be manipulated, but as the person who had spent decades paying attention, noticing the glances, the inconsistencies, the whispered meetings. I leaned forward slightly, feeling my pulse steady. "This," I said quietly, "is not voluntary. This is coercion. This is fear dressed as guidance." My daughter's eyes widened. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. The advisor shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to intervene or remain silent. The man beside me finally spoke again. "Then we have a choice," he said. "We can negotiate honestly, or we can proceed with full transparency and legal oversight. The choice is yours." He didn't look threatening, he didn't raise his voice, but I could see the effect immediately. Fear, confusion, a crack in their carefully maintained composure. My daughter leaned back in her chair, her eyes flicking to the folder. She understood in that moment that her control had limits and that someone else was watching. I realized something important then. I was not powerless. I had allies, I had knowledge, I had courage, and this table, once a stage for intimidation, had become the arena where the truth would emerge. I leaned back, allowed a small, measured smile, and waited. They believed the documents would bend me. They believed silence would protect their plan, but the next moment would reveal not just the truth, but who held real power, and it would change everything. No one signed anything that night. The men in suits gathered their folders more slowly than they had placed them down, their confidence visibly fractured. One of them muttered something about reviewing options. Another avoided eye contact entirely. My daughter stayed seated. Her hands rested on the table now, no longer steady. The authority she had arrived with had drained away, replaced by something closer to uncertainty. The man beside me stood first. "We'll be in touch," he said calmly. "Any further communication should come through legal counsel." That was the end of it. The advisors left without another word. Conversations in the restaurant slowly returned, though I noticed several people watching us with curiosity, unaware of how close something irreversible had come to happening. When it was just the two of us left, my daughter finally spoke. "You didn't have to do this in public." I met her eyes. "You didn't have to threaten me in private." She looked away. We didn't reconcile that night. And maybe that was the hardest truth to accept, that love does not survive control, and forgiveness cannot exist where accountability is refused. In the weeks that followed, more truths surfaced. The financial pressure hadn't started with the baby. It had begun months earlier, quietly, carefully, under the guise of advice and planning. Once exposed, the arrangements unraveled on their own. Nothing was taken from me. Everything I built remained mine. I updated my will. I simplified my accounts. I removed access where trust had been misplaced. And slowly, I rebuilt something even more important: peace. Some relationships never return to what they were, but some endings are necessary to protect the life you still have ahead of you. Now my days are quieter, mornings are slower. I drink my coffee without rushing, I walk instead of worry, and I no longer confuse guilt with love. If there's one thing I learned, it's this: being kind does not mean being unprotected. Boundaries are not cruelty, they are survival. I didn't lose my family that night. I found myself. They thought age had made me fragile, but age had simply made me aware. And once I saw the truth, I refused to look away.